Kamra. Pranjal Kamra is an Indian value investor who co-founded Finology Ventures Private Limited, an investment advisory firm in 2018. He is also a YouTube sensation with around 3 million subscribers over his YouTube channel related to the stock market and personal finance. He has also written two best-selling books on stock market, Investonomy and Mint Your Money. Today, he will share his insights on the topic why value investing and long-term thinking is important. The audience members can ask their questions through the comment section, which will be taken at the end. Over to you, Pranjal.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. I hope I am audible and you guys can see me.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Uh, Thank you so much for calling me here. I strongly believe that even I'm just getting started. I hardly know a thing or two about investing. So the fact that you all considered me worthy enough to be at such a prestigious institution is a great honor. So thank you so much. We would, in fact, Madhur, you just mentioned that we'll take Q&A at the end. In fact, I would prefer if we keep it interactive throughout, because sometimes it happens that because I don't know you guys previously, sometimes I might assume that you know a lot or you know too less, and thereby the wavelength would not match. So if it's interactive from a couple of questions, I would know that to which depth I have to go. Anyways, you guys are IITians, so I'm compared to you, I'm very, very dumb. So mostly it'll happen that I'll disappoint you guys. So it's better if we keep it conversational and would be happy to answer all your queries. Rather than blurbing out what I feel is worthy, it's great if I can add value and I can solve your doubts. So that would be better. So yeah, let's get started with today's topic. So basically, when we talk about
Excuse me.
value investing, there's this.
Excuse me, Pranjal.
Hello.
Actually,
Yeah.
your video is not visible. Only audio voice is coming.
Who is it? Just a second. Still not? I mean, it shows that my video is on Teams. My video is on. It's still not visible.
It's
No,
not
sir, it's
visible
not
to me.
visible.
Just a second. Tried even presenting. Just a second. Maybe I'll leave and I'll join again.
Madhur, I guess you have to turn your video off for the guest to have their video on.
Now it's visible. Now it's visible. The voice is not, but video is visible.
Hello.
Yes, the voice is audible now.
And the video?
Video is also visible.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So let's get started. Sorry for the trouble. I don't know what happened. So when we talk about value investing, often there's this perception that there's an investing called growth investing and there's something called value investing. To me personally, I think they are virtually the same. They are basically the same things because what happens is whichever company you are interested in buying, ultimately you only buy something if you think that the value of the thing is less compared to what's it worth. So if you're getting an iPhone worth 80,000 rupees for 50,000, you're buying it because you think it's undervalued compared to its original value. So even for certain companies which are considered to be growth, say Zomato, say InfoEdge, say these high-tech online companies which are perceived that they'll grow faster, even those are value picks. Why? Because investors who are investing in those companies, they think that compared to the growth potential of the company, this company is available at a cheaper price. So compared to something that the company has to offer, it's cheap. So, regardless of what your reason is, you would buy something if you think it's valuable. People buy phones worth 1 lakh rupees because they perceive that if they're buying an Apple phone, it has durability, quality, maybe, coolness quotient, other factors which they think is worth 1 lakh rupees. Your reason could be as small as I want to be, feel part of my group. I want to look cool. The reason could be anything, but you think it's worth 1 lakh rupees and you're buying it. So to me, all investing is value investing. And these are just, why do we have so many terms in investing? Growth, value, momentum, contra. Simply because there are hundreds of providers of these services. So there is something called portfolio management services. There is something called, investment advisors. All need to sell their services. Now, how do you sell your service if you don't differentiate yourself? And how do you differentiate yourself? By coining these terms. We are momentum, we are growth, we are contra. The fact is, there's something called momentum investing, which means they pick stocks which they perceive would move in the short run. So in the short run, if within a few months or a year, if you think some stocks would give you great returns, you pick those stocks, and that's basically what's called momentum investing. Now, while it sounds fancy, the reality is if I knew which stocks would move in the next 3 months, I would invest in those stocks. Everyone would invest in those stocks. The point is, it's most difficult to figure out which stocks will move in the next few months. If people could knew, everyone would invest. So I don't think it's something, something unique or something you could have a different category for and things like that. To me, all investing is value investing simply because you're buying something that you see worthy or you see is worth buying. So, just like anything else, we buy shoes, we buy clothes, we buy cars because we think this particular brand of shoes, shirts, or car is worth it. So in investing, it's similar. I mean, all intelligent people, they invest something in which they believe and they believe will grow more and they believe that its present price is undervalued. So all investing is value investing. We would go. So this was just the intro part, but I'll be happy to take questions as I move across topics, just to know that how far or how deep I should go within topics. So any questions still here? Anything you would like me to clarify?
Like nowadays, many people are running after quick money kind of things. And also we see there has been lot of IPOs in which lot of listing gain has been seen.
అంటే లేకపోతే హెడ్సెట్ మౌస్ ఇలాంటివి.
I heard two voices. Was not able to hear either. Madhur, maybe you could go first, and then the other person could go next.
Like for the last 1 year, many new participants are coming into the stock market, especially the retail investors. and
Sure.
most of them are running after the quick money making things, like they are mainly betting on the listing gain of IPOs, and are also thinking that they can get multi-bagger returns in just few months.
Sure.
So like can you can you tell them that what they are doing wrong for someone who is investing in the stock market for the long term
Sure.
for
And
wealth?
sure, got that. And what was the other question from the other person? I could not get the name. I'll answer both the questions at one go. I believe there was a lady asking a question. Ma'am, could you ask your question again? Fine, I'll answer this question. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people have entered the market since the pandemic struck, and one great thing for them, but not so great thing in the long run, is that they've only seen one side of the coin. Everything is bright, everything is rising. It's exciting, and people think it's easy money. And which is why we have had a lot of IPOs, a lot of startups coming up with their IPOs. A lot of IPOs have already gone to the market. I'll tell you why that happens and why I believe most IPOs are a bad deal, and why you should ignore most of the IPOs no matter what happens in the market. Think of it, when a stock lists in the stock market. So when a stock is available for you to buy any day, every day, and say you buy 10 shares of Reliance. Why are you able to buy it? Because someone is selling. So every day, thousands of people buy Reliance, thousands of people sell Reliance. And thereby, the price that we arrive, the price at which Reliance is quoting, is the aggregate of all the thousands of buy and sell transactions that's happening. So basically, the market decides the price of Reliance. Exactly the opposite happens when an IPO comes. So when an IPO is coming, the owners of the company or the early investors of the company are offering the public their shares. So promoters are selling and public can buy the shares. Now, what happens when you sell your car? What happens when you sell your property? And what is your intention? See, sometimes you would sell it for less than what it's worth. Say you want to sell your bike for 50,000, but you want to sell it very urgently. And the problem is you cannot wait, but you're not getting a buyer for 50,000, so you're ready to sell for 40,000. Those cases are there. But what if there's no urgency and you have a house worth 1 crore rupees? What's your intention? Your intention is not to offer a bargain to the purchaser. You would not say this house is worth 1 crore, but I will give it to you for 80 lakhs because I really care for you. No, you want maximum money for your house. So you would try to sell it for 2 crores if it's possible. You would try to sell it for 5 crores if it's possible. So imagine an owner of the company who has started the company, managed it, scaled it, and is very emotional about his company. He is selling his shares in the company. He does not want that you should get a bargain, right? He would do all kinds of media publicity, PR, all kinds of networking to ensure there's enough hype in the market and he or she gets the maximum price for his shares. Which means when the owner is selling his or her shares, you are not going to get a bargain. It's mostly be overvalued, and that overvaluation will be justified by all the PR and hype, and every Twitter account, every Instagram account, every YouTube video will be blabbering about it. It's mostly paid, it's mostly paid. So you are unlikely to get a bargain. And there are already 5,000 more companies listed in the market. Why do you think the one new company that's coming is the best one and deserves your money? We all have limited cash, even Mukesh Ambani for that matter has limited cash. Money is always a scarce resource. It's never enough. And thereby, if there are already 5,000 options available in the market, why do you need the next one that's coming? Why do you think that's the best use of your money? In most cases, that's not the best use of your money. Your best use is from within the 5,000 companies that is already available for you to buy and sell. So, one thumb rule in finance is don't buy what's being sold to you. So IPOs are sold very aggressively to you. All muscle, all media power is behind it. And follow the simple thumb rule. If an insurance policy is being sold to you too aggressively, don't buy it. If an FD, if a savings account, anything that's being sold to you very aggressively, why would you sell something very aggressively? Because that's very, very profitable for the seller, which means it's not at all profitable for the buyer. So if seller is hell-bent on selling something particular, be sure it's the worst product for you. And with IPOs, it's mostly true. So a lot of things have happened. At times markets are irrational on the positive side and on the negative side for a few months, a couple of years. So last 1.5 years, we have seen a one-way, tear-away bull run, and a lot of people think this is how the stock market works. But it could be really deadly when the tide turns. When the exact opposite happens, we need to know that if you bought a stock at 100 rupees and it falls to 50 rupees, it fell by 50%, only 50% it fell. But just for you to recover your money from 50 rupees, the stock would need to rise by 100%. It fell by 50%, but it will have to rise by 100%, which is why valuations are just so important. You just don't want to ever overpay, because for every rupee of fall, proportionately, the stock will have to rise proportionately more. It will be, not be proportional. It should be more than that. So in investing, it's more important that how efficiently you protect your capital. Think about this. If you buy a stock that for 100 rupees and it rose by 50% in the first year, it becomes 150 rupees. And the next year, it falls by, say, 33%, but it's back to 100. It rose by 50, fell by only 33%, but you are at zero. Compared to that, a stock that keeps rising 10% per year, you would be at 121% after 2 years. So, it's important that you don't go after stocks that you think will rise rapidly. It's more important to stick to stocks which you think will not fall rapidly, because stock prices falling is really destructive to wealth. So I believe, people think that stocks can only go one way. People who have entered in the last 1.5 years, and at times a large chunk of people are getting carried away. When the fall happens, it's not that your profits will be gone, a part of your capital will be gone as well. So it's really important to be careful in such times. Any further question, or should I move on to the next topic? Any question?
Like for the last 1 year, we have seen that Sensex has risen from the bottom of 26,000 to currently around 58,000. So would you suggest anyone, especially any beginners, to enter into the market at this juncture of time?
Oh, well, good question. Although I'll answer it differently, but good question. While yes, generally markets are expensive, I would say most pockets in the markets are expensive. But at the end of the day, we have to realize that what is Sensex? Sensex is basically a basket of 30 stocks. Nifty is basically a basket of 50 stocks. And what could at times happen is that these big 50 or 30 companies, they are doing very well. So just to give you an example, which companies did benefit from COVID? Mostly tech companies, chemical companies, pharma companies, they benefited from COVID. Mostly IT tech companies, they benefited. Anyone who was set to benefit from digitization, they benefited. And think about it, both Sensex and Nifty have a large weightage of IT stocks. So if IT stocks as a group do well, Sensex and Nifty will most likely do well, which means at times Sensex and Nifty cannot give you the true picture of the market, because a couple of sectors which have high weightage in the indices, they are doing well, and that way they can be disconnected from the market. So at the end of the day, you have to realize that out of the 5,000, if there are 5,000 stocks, a basket of 30 or 50 stocks cannot give you the right picture. It could be misleading at times. So while I wouldn't say that just because the market, it was at 26, 27,000, now it's at 57, 58,000, does not mean just on this parameter, I wouldn't say it's expensive. Apart from that, there are always certain pockets which are undervalued. So if someone, of course, when it's 27,000, it's much easier to do your research and find undervalued stocks. And at 58,000, it's much more difficult to do it. But I don't think this is the reason why you should not invest in the market or delay your investment, because you need to understand that time in the market is also important. If someone is invested for 5 years versus someone is invested for 1 year, Someone who has invested for 5 years is more likely to make money. So time in the market is also important. And specifically because it's a young audience, most of you are students. Think about this. Most of your cash flows, most of your earnings, most of my cash flow, my earnings will come in the future. You'll start something of your own, you'll get jobs, you will earn in the future. You have 30-40 years of earnings in your future. So even if you buy stocks at an expensive price today, and for the next 2 years the stock prices don't go anywhere or fall, you don't need to be worried, because all your cash flows are in the future. You'll always have more and more incremental money to average out your investments. Yes, someone who's say 50 plus, 55 plus, whose earnings were in the past, they are investing their life savings and not future earnings in the market. They need to be careful, because if the market falls today, they don't have cash coming up in the future to average out their current investments. So it depends on which stage of life you are in. Someone who's a youngster, they should not stop themselves from investing in the market, because this is the time when you have the least number of liabilities. Your dependents, your liabilities, responsibilities will only increase. This is the time you can take risks. This is the time you can afford losing money. So what's important is, rather than not investing in the market at all at this stage, if I was in your place, I would invest money that I can afford to lose, without affecting my education loan, without affecting my daily essentials. Any money that I have surplus, I would invest. So even if I lose it, I would think in my mind that maybe I went for 2 weekend trips and spent that money there. So any money that you can afford to lose, do invest it in the market. Even if you lose, you'll learn a lot of things. Where did you go wrong? You'll identify your mindset. How much panic you get when the stock price falls, what kind of temperament you have, because stock market is an art, it's not a science. And what's the difference between art and science? In science, the results are always perfect, near perfect. If you know that these are my inputs, then this has to be the result. Art, the rules are very relaxed. Cricket, singing, dancing, just by following the process, you cannot ensure success. That's art. Success depends on various controllable, uncontrollable factors. Science, if you control your inputs, the output will most likely be that. So it's an art, and if it's an art, which means you need to know your basics, but also practice is extremely important. So you need to be in the market. Skin in the game has to be there, because you only understand your temperament when you are actually losing money or winning money. You can read hundreds of books about it, but unless you experience that, the thrill of making money, the fear of losing money, is when you realize what suits you and what does not suit you. So as youngsters, invest in the stock market no matter where it is, but only invest what you can afford to lose. So yeah, this was a great question. Covered some part of what I actually had to say. Great question. Any other question?
I really like this analogy of investing is an art but not a science. Like nowadays we see that many youngsters are thinking that they can make some algorithms or use some screens, and based on those parameters they think that they can uh, pick up one of the best stocks in the market. So could you also elaborate more on this thing?
Sure. So I think this debate is sometimes there, that generally, not just in investing, but which is in various streams there's this debate that should we follow a scientific approach, should we follow an artistic approach. Sports, you must have seen the movie Moneyball, where a scientific sort of a structure leads them to victory. I think in most disciplines in life, success comes from the right balance of science and art. So human brain combined with science delivers the best results. I think it's true for investing as well. I wouldn't say that machines are useless in picking stocks. I wouldn't say that you should 100% rely on machines. What machines are good at, I'll tell you. There are 5,000 companies. 5,000. So what is Ticker? So Ticker is our product that helps people filter stocks. Ticker.finology.in. It's basically science. It has pre-built filters. It allows you to use filters to. And what's the purpose of that? The purpose of that is that humanly it's impossible to analyze 5,000 stocks. But what technology does best is to filter out the ones which are crap, filter out ones which are just too expensive, filter out ones which are, which you are not able to understand. So what technology does great is reduce your work, and which is what machines do. They make processes easier, they make human life easier. So in investing as well, machines are great to filter the list of 5,000 stocks down to 100, 200 stocks that suit your criteria. For example, you need stocks that are debt free, that don't have too much bank loans. You need stocks whose profits are growing, whose revenues are growing. It could filter that down. But once you're down to 100, 200, 250 stocks is when I think the human intelligence should take over, because then quantitative factors are not enough. For some companies, the company could be in losses. So while on the quantitative parameters, it's a bad sign. It's a loss-making company. But we see how Paytm is valued, how Zomato is valued. These are profit-making companies. These are loss-making companies, but very expensive, very valuable. Why? Because the human mind understands that currently they are in the phase of scaling, growing, and right now to judge them on profitability would mean that they will have to sacrifice on their growth and customer acquisition. And if they focus on profitability right now, probably some competitor will be more aggressive and they'll gain market share. So for these companies, it's important that they don't look at profitability in the short or middle run and focus on the long-term values. So this is where human intelligence comes in. So I think perfect investing is a mix of both science and art. Where most people go wrong is that most people either make it completely scientific and eliminate human virtues, or the other way around. But I think it's the mix that works the best. Anything else? Any other question? Sure. I think someone raised their hand. Sure. Fine. We'll discuss till then, the importance of thinking long term in investing. For me, it's always been the case that, investing to me is basically running a business. Ultimately you are investing in businesses. What the stock market offers you is offering you a bouquet of 5,000 companies, which are probably 90% of India's biggest companies. As a fresher, I was not in a position to, start a Geo on my own, a Tata Motors on my own, which require lakhs of crores of capital, a team, experience, network, a lot of things. We have great ideas as engineers. You have great products ideas, but I've seen a lot of engineers struggle with the fact that they know how to produce a prototype, but they don't have the resources to scale it. And this is where sometimes it's frustrating that I can do this. I've built this product. All I need is some government support, some grants, and I can do it. But that does not come. So at times, even if we want to, we are restricted by things out of our control. This is where stock market comes in. It gives you the opportunity to invest in companies that you like, that you relate to, and company that's closest to your vision of what you would have done. No matter what your business idea is, there's a most probably there's a company that's already doing that. So you can invest in that company. You're not limited by capital. You can invest 500 rupees, 50,000 rupees, 50 lakh rupees, 50 crore rupees. Depends on you. You don't need to give time. Probably India's best managers will be working for you. So if you have invested in Tata Motors, Ratan Tata was working for you. Adi Godrej would work for you. Mukesh Ambani would work for you. They would never work for you for your startup. So here's your money going into the best companies who have all the resources, advantages, everything, and the best managers and the best brains working for you. And therefore, stock market to me is an opportunity to run a partnership business with India's best businessmen. That's what stock market is for me. And I think most people go wrong here. They expect too much too quickly from the stock market. When you're buying say gold, say real estate, all of us are very, very patient. But when it comes to stock market, we need returns quickly. We forget that the idea of stock market is to partner country's best businesses and become their shareholders. And and since they're best businesses, they're good at protecting your capital, but because they know the importance of protecting your capital, these businesses will not take undue risks, which means most likely, unless it's a tear away bull run like this, which happens maybe once in a decade, your money will grow by 20%, 25% every year and will not double every year. So keeping your expectations in check is important. What often happens is that for 2 years you were invested in a good stock which was fundamentally healthy, which was a quality stock. For 2 years it did not move. You get frustrated, you invest in a risky stock. That stock falls, you lose your money, you waste 3 years of your life in stock market, you go out of the market thinking it's a casino. But you need to understand that what's in your hand. Picking quality stocks, having a basket of 10 to 20 quality stocks is in your hands. When they move is not in your hands. So it's important to be humble, accept your limitations, and stay patient. I picked CDSL about 4 years ago, if I'm right, if I remember right. For 3 years, it did absolutely nothing. In fact, it was down by, I think, 20-30%. Imagine and it was one of my biggest holdings. So imagine 2-3 years, stock being down 20-30%. Within last 1 year, it moved up 5-6 times. So now if I would have lost patience, I would have lost a gain of 5-6 times. And now if I look back, even if in 4 years my stock went up 5-6 times, it's absolutely great. It's 100% return every year. Now, if I look back. So it's very, very important that in stock market, you think long run. Why? Because when the stock will move is not in your hand. So the best thing is you pick 15 great stocks and every year 3 or 4 stocks will keep moving. And therefore at a portfolio level, you'll never be frustrated. But if you buy 5 stocks which you think are great, and because it's just 5 stocks, maybe none of them move for the next few years, you'll be frustrated, you'll take undue risks, you'll lose your capital, you'll go out of the market. That's the typical cycle of a new investor. So, if from this session you had to take anything away, I would request that please avoid this cycle. It's been happening in the last 50 years. I think it will happen again with a lot of people, but if few people don't go through that cycle and they stay away from that cycle, they'll make good wealth. So yeah. Any questions now? Anything you would like to ask?
Hi Pranjal, there's a hand raised, so I'm unmuting the person and
Sure.
You can take up the questions.
Yeah. Okay.
We have Lallan Singh. He
Sure.
has raised his hand, so you can unmute and ask your question.
Okay, I can unmute.
Hi.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Hi, Pranjal. First of all, I want to thank you. Actually, I have learned so many things from your YouTube videos.
Oh, thank you so much.
So my question is, I have two questions.
Sure.
So first question is regarding, I mean, you said long-term investment. So I just want to know what is the definition of long-term investment. Why I am asking this? Because in a stock markets there are many sectors or many stocks that are cyclic. I mean,
Sure.
they will rise for 5-10 years, and after that they will then again come to that level. For example, if I will take any specific name, then see Tata Steel.
Sure.
10 years
That's
back
the
also it was
in
around
my mind.
1200, 1300. Now also it is like that only.
Right.
So I just want to know what is the long-term investment definition, and how do we know when, I mean, I should exit from any particular stock?
Sure.
And my second question is regarding momentum trading, right?
Okay.
So again, I will name a stock, IRCTC, right?
Mhm.
So there, if you see their previous quarter result, the result were not so good. But
Mhm.
then also, the stock is running like every day you open your trading account, you will see IRCTC making a new high.
Right.
So why don't we write the momentum? And is there any specific theory or anything you want to suggest us for momentum trading.
Sure.
That's all.
Right. Okay. Good questions. I mean, again, covers a point that I had to say about portfolio construction. I'll come to what exactly long term is, but I think there is a bigger underlying question. Something like a Tata Steel, something like a Coal India, which moves maybe once in 5 years, once in 7 years, and things like that. As an investor, it's important that you think on a portfolio level. This is what we do, that we think at times on a stock level. Whenever you are thinking in terms of individual stocks, you could find dozens of reasons, you could find dozens of biases. Often during cricket matches, Dhoni used to say this a lot, and these days I find Kohli saying this as well, that, in any match, there are 11 players. 99% of the matches, a couple of players will not do well. But if the team is winning, they continue with the winning combination. What does that mean? They are viewing the team as a team and not as 11 individuals. You need to realize that when you have a bunch of individuals, similarly a bunch of stocks, not everyone will do well. But you also need to realize that their roles are different. Maybe the pitch was not right for them, maybe the conditions, maybe the opposition was not right, and therefore you give them that benefit of doubt, which again happens with investing. If you think stock on a stock by stock basis, you could say that, in cyclical stocks, timing is extremely important. Why would someone buy Tata Steel now, and things like this? But the reality is, if Tata Steel was one stock out of 20 stocks that you had, even if it moves in once in 5 years and rises by 3 times, 4 times, you don't care. You would care if you only have 5, 7 stocks or 10 stocks and 3 of them are cyclicals. Then you would care. But out of 20 stocks, if only 2 stocks are cyclical, you wouldn't care. You would give them that time. So every stock in your portfolio has a role. Some stocks are there to diversify. Some stocks are there to give you overnight, potentially aim for overnight returns. Some stocks are there to protect you when the market would go, when the tide would turn. So I think, just like cricket, just like football, because it's a team game, every stock is a part of your portfolio team, and every stock has a role. And these things don't matter if you have a proper portfolio. Having said that, what is long term? It does not, most people try to define it in terms of time, 5 years, 7 years, 9 years. No, I think, long term is a mindset. If I think that, in the foreseeable future, the company would do well. So if my mindset is the company would do well in the future. This, think about it carefully. When you say the stock would do well, you could mean it 6 months, 1 year, 2 year. But whenever we say that the company would do well in future, naturally we think at least what, 2, 3 years? You wouldn't say the company will do well in the next 2 months. That doesn't happen. Whenever we say that a company would do well, it's minimum 2, 3 years, maybe 10 years, maybe 15 years. So it does not have a timeline, but it's the mindset. To me, long term is a mindset with which you think whether the company will do well or not, regardless of how the stock price will do. If your mindset is that the company would do well, the timeline could change, long term definition could change. I have some stocks in my portfolio which I think will do very well for the next 10 years. I have some which I think maybe after 3 to 5 years there will be problem. Some I think I'll own till I die. So to me, depending on the stock, it ranges from 3 years to 30, 40 years. But the aim is, I'm thinking company would do well in the future. So this mindset to me is long term. And I think if this is the mindset, anyone would think a minimum of 2, 3 years. I hope I was able to answer it. I hope it makes sense. It's slightly different, but I hope.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, Coming to the momentum part, firstly, honestly, I've never done momentum trading. I've never done intraday. I've never done anything short term. So probably I'm the worst person to tell you this. In fact, to be very honest, my colleague was just teaching me a couple of weeks ago how to place an intraday order. it might sound funny, but I genuinely did not know how to place an intraday order. And someone asked me, he came to meet me and he asked me something. He showed me his Zerodha app and told me, "Ye mujhe problem aa raha hai." So I did intraday and I don't see my position or things like that. So it is then that I had to tell him that I don't know how to check, and he would not believe me. आपको कैसे पता नहीं होगा? So that is when I called my colleague and I told, यार सिखा दे मुझे. I need to learn the basics of this. So while I don't know anything about trading, honestly, I would say कि it's not that having the ambition to earn in the short run is bad. It's great. I mean, if there was a way to earn money consistently in the short run in the stock market, I would have done it. The reality is, it's very, very, very difficult to predict which stock. See, you told me, right, that the quarter results were not great. They were not supposed to be great. Trains are still not running, so they were not supposed to be great. But once the stock started moving, the news flows came in, momentum came in, and now it's moving. The fact is, we could not predict. Now it looks obvious that it started moving. We should have known that it would move by these many percentage. I should have participated. The problem is, even if you do it a couple of times, it's not sustainable. Because in investing, you wouldn't be successful by a single trade or by a couple of trades. Probably if you're a trader, you would need thousands of trades in your life to actually create crores of wealth. Whereas in investing, I probably need, if I start by 10,000 rupees, I need, assuming I would never do it, no one should, but assuming I invested in one stock, I need one 10 bagger, one stock that takes my money from 10,000 to 1 lakh. Then I need one more that takes it from 1 lakh to 10 lakh, one more that takes it from 10 lakh to 1 crore, and one more that takes it from 1 crore to 10 crore. 4 10 baggers, if I find in value investing, long-term investing, and say even if each of these stocks take 5 years to move, like CDSL did, 4 years, 6x. So even if I find 3 more such stocks, I am at 10 crores. Even if it takes 5 years, I started at 25. By the time I'm 45, assuming there's no inflation, I had 10 crore rupees. I'm rich. So in investing, you only need to be right very few times. But in trading, because you're not aiming for 10x, you're not aiming for 5x, you're aiming for 5%. You need to be right 1,000 times. And being right 1,000 times in the world of trading, investing, highly dynamic, things change very quickly. I know very, very few people who have been able to do that. So I think it's that much more tough. You're testing yourself that much more. You are increasing your chances of going wrong that much more. So which is why I like to stay away from it, and which is why I can't tell you how to do momentum trading the right way, because I've never done it. And the reasoning is this. This is why I've never done it.
Rajin Kumar is asking, sometimes many operator comes into picture and they manipulate the stock of some good fundamental companies like many lower and upper circuits. So, and then many retail investors panic and exit from those stocks. So how one should go about that?
See, honestly, I have seen a lot of instances wherein a poor quality stock was operated by a group of operators, and a stock that was worth 1 rupee was made to go to 50 rupees, 70 rupees, 80 rupees, 100 rupees. But on the flip side, I have known very few cases wherein a stock that was very, very good, that had great fundamentals, that was worth 1,000 rupees, that was trading at 1,000 rupees, that stock was brought down to 100 rupees. This I've seen it happening very, very less, because a lot of good money comes in. What happens is, if you pick a bad quality stock just because the momentum is there, just because the stock is moving from say 10 rupees to 20 rupees, you get attracted, you think it will go to 40, 80. The problem is, smart money never comes in. Intelligent money never comes in when it starts falling, because the quality is not good. So intelligent money never comes into the stock. But if it's a good quality stock, if the operator tries to bring it down, smart money comes in and takes the bargain, and the price, erosion stops. So if we just, it's about us. whether we are getting greedy, we want to make overnight gains, and thereby we are investing in penny stocks. If you're investing in great quality stocks, operator could still take it upwards, but can't take it down because smart money will come in. So it's about us. At times we get too greedy.
Many people think that while analyzing the stock, they can quickly see the financial statements of the company, like the growth in the sales figure, revenue figures, and other figures, and then they start investing in those stocks. But in last few decades, we have seen a lot of instances where many fraud cases has been seen to manipulate their financial statements. So could you elaborate on that?
Sure, good question. Which is why you don't trust what they say. See. Just because someone is saying something, you wouldn't trust that person. When would you trust that person? When you know their history, when you know that this person, he or she has proven their honesty, integrity, and which is why, in investing, quantitative aspects, doing these Excel calculation, valuation models is just 10% of the part. Because, unless you trust the numbers, you cannot reach to any conclusion based on these numbers. So 90% of your analysis as a stock picker is about analyzing industry, analyzing competitors, analyzing the business model, seeing if the business model has potential. That's about, say, I would say 60% of the work. Making sense that the business model is viable, the company has an advantage over its competitors, and the industry is set to grow. That's 60%. What's 30%? 30% is due diligence. People running the company, are they honest enough? Do they have integrity? What has been their past with tax authorities and legal cases running on them? How do they treat their employees? Things like these. And it's easy to figure out. I'll give you a couple of examples. If you look at the annual report of a company called Goodyear, one of the world's leading manufacturers of tires, they have an Indian subsidiary as well. They have everything to brag about. They could fill pages with how great their company is doing throughout the world. Yet their balance sheet, annual report, year after year, absolutely has no bragging at all. Whereas, often download. So at Ticker, we have annual reports of all the companies. Find out a micro cap and try a couple of micro caps and download their annual report. The smaller the company, at times, and the more controversial the company, the more court cases that the company has, the more the tax dispute that the company has, the more amount of flashy, colorful pages they would have, bragging about how great they are, their achievements. So you know that here is a company that's trying to show something else, and the reality is something else. So just from the look and feel of the annual report, it's a giveaway. Then you could see the amount of salaries that the company management is taking. So if the profits of the company are decreasing, but the manager's salary is increasing, it means they don't care about you. They care about their salary. Happens a lot in the market. Again, a very simple sign. Related party transactions. So if I have a listed company, I take money from public, and then I give loans to my cousins, my brothers, my uncles and aunties to do their business. It's a problem. You took money in this company and public gave it to you because they thought you'd invest it here. But you are giving it as loan to your relatives, and we don't know what they are doing. Again, a bad sign. Again, and apart from that, maybe read a few interviews of the management, watch a few of their recorded interviews on YouTube, just from the way they speak, just from the way they conduct themselves, how do they answer questions. There are, again, on Phrenology Ticker, there are con calls. So, every quarter, these company management, they talk to media people about what's happening in the company. So if you read those con calls, you would get to know that I asked something, and whether the person is actually answering what I asked or they are deviating from the question. So these are some very obvious signs through which you could put a flag on whether to trust the numbers of the company or whether to not trust the numbers of the company. This is how I do it.
I think we can move to the next part.
Right. Just a second. Am I visible?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, so because the topic was around the lines of long term, I would like to tell you that it's not just stock market where being long term is important. As a YouTuber, I've seen that when I entered this space, there were a lot of YouTubers in the finance domain doing really well. But when as an investor, it's lucrative to look at short-term profits. As a content creator, it's also lucrative that if I make video on this topic, I know I'll get a lot of views, and in doing that, their popularity, trustworthiness reduced. And at times, I'll be very honest, seeing at the number of views, it's tempting, but this is where the long-term mindset comes in that, okay, no, even if in the short run that brings you result, you are here in the long run. So that helps. Even if we talk about T20 cricket, when it started, we thought it's all slam bang. But these days, while watching the IPL, I see people talking about, the importance of the opening partnership, not losing in wicket early, even in 20 overs. They're thinking long term, play the new ball out, first 4 overs it swings, take that out. So, across life in all spheres. So Jeff Bezos, you must be aware, said that, just by thinking long term, he eliminates 99% of the competition because everyone else is thinking short term and medium term. So if you are willing to, you're IITians, I'm sure when you were preparing, a lot of your friends were, partying, going to movies, and it was tempting. It must have been tempting. I want to do the same. Why do I have to study and things like that? But you delayed your gratification. You thought long term, and you're seeing the results. So I think most of you are already conditioned to think long term, and it's great as potential investors. And again, it's not just about investing in life. Thinking long term works. So as a businessman, I've seen long term thinking works. We closed our advisory for a year. Last 1 year, when it was most lucrative, it was very, very tempting. Our revenues were at an all time high. It was very, very tempting, but we wanted to offer a better product. And in the journey of Phenology, we believe 1 year will be a very short time, and we don't need to care about revenue losses this year. And hopefully it will work out. So yeah, I mean, in life, thinking long term works, and thereby, as an extension, it works in the stock market as well. So no matter in your journey as an investor, a lot of people will tell you they know how to make money in the short run. But the reality is, if someone actually knew how to make 5% every month consistently, within a few years, they'll be the richest person on earth. 5% a month, 60%, more than 60% in a year, no matter how small you start, you will be amongst the richest within a decade. And that does not happen. Most of the people who are on the richest in the world are businessmen. And businessmen who have had people like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Mukesh Ambani, who've taken 30, 40 years to get there. So even if you have your own business, it takes 30, 40 years of compounding at least to get there. And then we have Warren Buffett as an investor who probably took 50, 60 years to get there. So if you have to be amongst the richest, and if trading actually made it possible, people would get there in a decade and not 30, 40, 50 years, because 5% a month, even 3% a month, you'll get there very, very quickly. So it's about keeping your expectations in check, investing in what you know, and never venturing out of your comfort zone. Only investing in companies you understand thoroughly, and you'll be safe. Investing is about doing the basic things right, and we often run towards the more advanced, the more fancy sounding things. But it's as simple as, if your family uses Colgate to brush their teeth, and so does your friend, and so does your neighbor, I think Colgate is the company that we should be investing in. It's as simple as that. So yeah, I mean, this is all I had to say. Any more questions, I'd be happy to take.
Can you tell something about portfolio optimization?
Right. I mean, again, it sounds very scientific, but to me, it's common sense. That first, you would never invest more than 10% of your money in a single stock, because you have to understand that even the best companies fail, because business is probably where the smartest minds operate. They try to outdo each other, and no matter whether you are IBM, your Kodak, your Nokia, you're bound to fail. Your sustainability could be 100 years, could be 200 years, but just like human life, businesses have to end as well. Businesses have an expiry date, just like all other living things, and you have to accept that reality. And if you know that the companies in which you are investing, they have an expiry date, you would buy different companies, right? So that not every company's expiry date comes at the same time and your money expires. So just if you accept that reality, that no matter which company you choose, that company will end. You would invest in a lot of companies. We only invest in a few companies when we think our companies are immortal. So at its simplest, investing is about not investing in too many companies, not investing in too less companies. That's what portfolio construction is about. Ideally, I would have somewhere around 15 to 20 companies so that it's easier to manage. More than that, if you have 30, 40 companies, even if one of your company does well, it makes no difference to your overall money. And then again, you're thinking stock specific and not portfolio specific, which is why I would not have too many stocks. Apart from that, I would make sure that my money is not invested. Not more than 25% of my money is invested in a single sector. So if I am bullish on pharma, I'll restrict my exposure to pharma by 25%, which means I'll at least be invested in 4 or 5 different sectors, which means if one sector is doing well, not all my money is there, but if it's doing bad, not all my money is gone. And my other sectors are still there to protect me. So to me, it's as simple as this, ensuring that there are at least, I think 5 is the number for me, at least 5 sectors in my portfolio, around 15 to 20 companies. Ideal allocation that I do is around, probably 5%, 6% of my capital in a stock. If I'm really bullish, it would go up to 8%. If I'm taking a risk, it would come down to 3%. And that's it. Ultimately, I think it's important to keep your stock picking really simple, because simplicity works in the long run, and it's important to keep your rules very simple so that you follow them all the time. You could have 100 rules, but the reality is we could only follow some 5, 7 rules. So it's important that we have 5, 7 rules and make sure that we follow them all. So your rules could be lesser, but your discipline has to be more. At times we have more rules and less discipline, which does not work. So I think it's very simple that way. Any more questions? Anything else?
There is someone who's been waiting for pretty long to ask the question. They have raised their hand. Ankit, you can unmute.
Pranjal, I'm audible.
Hi.
I have a very basic question. Someone who has just started investing or is just planning to start investing, usually what we do is we follow various channels, YouTube news channel of news article. We see the stocks and we see what is going through there. So what would be your suggestion to a beginner who is planning to start investing? How to look for a share or for a company? Okay, be it sector wise or company wise. Second, my question is, when we look for long term investment, for a beginner who has never done investment, the fear of losing money is always there. So what would be your suggestion? You told that you must have an appetite to bear the loss, but there are other investment options available, which are less risky or on the lower side. So what would be your suggestions in that regard?
Right. I think, as a beginner, the best thing that you could do is invest in stocks that you use as a consumer. Because, as a consumer, you know whether the product is good or not. So if a particular brand of t-shirt you see suddenly is being bought by you, your friends like it, that in most cases, if the product is selling well, the company is doing well. So, as a beginner, in fact, I still do about, I would say 40% of my money is invested in stocks that I like as a consumer. If I don't like a product as a consumer, it's gone. I'm not investing in it at all. Because at times what happens is we try to invest in the next hot sector. Say Tesla is coming, EVs are all the rage. But what happens is, you never know that after the disruption or after the change in the industry, who the leader will be. In traditional fuel vehicles, we know Maruti is comfortably the leader in passenger car vehicles. Who will be the leader in EV? We don't know. So while betting in disruption is adventurous, it's great, and if you pick the winner, you could make extraordinary returns, but picking the winner is very difficult. So I like to invest in what's not going to change. Will people keep brushing their teeth after 10 years? Probably yes. Will people keep wearing shoes after 10 years? Yes. Most people do the other thing, the harder part. Uh, Whether there will be hydrogen cars in 10 years, whether there will be automated cars in 10 years, and they try to bet there. Much more difficult. Investing is about keeping it simple. So as a beginner, pick stocks. Zomato, if you order food from Zomato and you think it's better than Swiggy, because I'm sure you have been a customer of Swiggy as well as Zomato. So you don't just know their business model as a consumer, you also know whether their execution is better than Swiggy or not. Banks, we all have bank accounts. Are you satisfied with your bank account? If I was in your place, I would do a raise of hand in my class that maybe have 4 bank options and run a poll which which of your classmates have a bank account in which of the banks, because whichever bank youngsters are preferring, that bank is supposed to do well. So it's about your family. They could be in banks, they could be working as managers in Tata Steel, they could be IT professionals. Ask them, what are the things your company is good at, and and which is your best competitor, and why that competitor is the best. Ultimately you will make money somewhere where you know more than the market. How would you know about a company more than the market? If you use it as a customer and the market doesn't, if your family member are an employee or a stakeholder in the company, so you have to have an advantage, an edge. So companies, sectors where you have an edge, stick to that. And not just as a beginner, I think all your life stick to companies that you think you know more than the market. Most likely you will do really well. What's your second question? Sorry, I forgot.
Thank you for the answer of the first part. The second question was that as an investor who does not have appetite to lose the money, so what should be the planning or the investment design? I mean, let's say suppose, that's the major part.
I would say that you'll have to be willing to lose money in the market. Sounds brutal, but the reality is, when you are worried about losing money in the short run, you're thinking short term. You got to have to believe that I am investing in the best companies in India, and thereby, if I don't do well in the long run, means India as a country is not doing well, because in the last 40 years Sensex has grown by 14% or so. So if market on an average moves at 14% in a year, you know that if you do your basics right, you'll at least make 14% in a year. So I think if in the short run you lose money, it's you thinking short term. You have to understand that in the long run you will make money, but within that period, in the 20-year period, there will be time periods of 2 years or 3 years where you will lose money. But those are just part of the journey. In the long run, you will make money if you are sensible. So if you don't want to do anything else, invest in index funds. Again, if in the last 40 years Sensex has grown by 14%, it might grow by 10%, it might grow by 16%. I don't know, but they will outperform. The Sensex index will outperform FD or at least match FD. So what's the risk? The risk is of not investing in these instruments, right? So even if you look at the worst equity mutual fund in the last 10 years, even if you picked, so 10 years ago, even if you picked the worst mutual fund possible, your returns would still have been 8-9% more than FDs. And this, if you would have picked the worst mutual fund scheme in India, because in the long run, the market went up by 14%. So even the worst scheme went up by 8-9%. So of course, I don't see this as risk. I see this as volatility in the short run. But in the long run, even if you invest in the worst scheme, I don't think there's risk if you can stay invested for 10 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can we extend this session for 10 more minutes since it's already past 6 and if you are not busy?
Yeah, sure. I love answering queries on stock market. So yeah.
So how do you think one can analyze commodities companies in a very good manner, since these companies depends on a lot of factors like the demand side, supply side, government policies, and many more
Honestly,
factors?
yeah. Honestly, Madhur, I mean, I don't invest in commodity companies. I think I don't know how to analyze them. So, as an investor, it's important to understand your limitations and what you are poor at. So, I mean, I don't have a commodity company in my portfolio. We don't recommend commodity stocks to our clients because we feel we as a company lack the bandwidth. So, when I said to Ankit that stick to companies you understand, we follow that in our company as well. We are a fintech company, which means we understand the finance sector really well. We understand the technology sector really well. And because we are a digital, consumer brand, we are a consumer fintech company, not a B2B company. We understand consumer brand. So, we invest in FMCG, we invest in OTC. Even on the pharma side, we invest in OTC branded products. We invest in broking, credit rating, banking, NBFC, stock exchange, depositories. We invest in SaaS companies, B2C technology companies, cloud services companies. This is our forte. We don't venture out of that. So commodity stocks, I genuinely don't know how to analyze them.
Do you think that global macroeconomic factors like quantitative easing has been playing a very key instrumental role in the increasing liquidity in the emerging markets since the 2008 economic crash?
That should be, yeah. I mean, it's definitely one of the factors. Definitely makes a difference. But again, I mean, it's investing is about controllables. You asked, and I told you that yes, it is one of the factors. But if you would not have asked, I would not think on those directions because ultimately it's not in my control. What happens in the international market, how the Fed is reacting, how the World Bank is reacting, how the world economy is doing, whether they are printing paper currency, what are they doing is not in my control. When last 5 years, Brexit happened, GST happened, demonetization happened. In the short run, all of those events were considered to be, something that will change the world. Market could be really volatile and things like that. As an investor, as a small investor, the reality is I can't do anything about it. And as an investor, I have to think that okay, Brexit happened. Will people stop buying soaps? Will people stop buying detergent? Okay, GST happened. Will people still buy soaps? If people are still going to buy soaps, HUL will still be the market leader. I mean, demonetization happened. Will people still buy soaps? They will. In the short run, because newspapers have to be filled, news channels have to run. They telecast it for a week non-stop because they have to show something just to adjust their ad inventory. Their ad inventory has to be utilized, which is why these events are blown out of proportion. But most companies, they're not affected. In fact, I would say COVID happened. Even then, I would say in general, a lot of MSMEs were affected, small businesses were affected, self-employed people were affected. But apart from say aviation, holiday, a couple of other sectors, multiplexes, most companies they did not saw growth, but they did not, their businesses did not go bankrupt. They're still running, they're still surviving. Once situation improves, they'll be back on track. And this is once in a century kind of an event. Much bigger than demonetization, Brexit, GST, and so on. Once in a century kind of a global crisis, COVID was. So yeah, I mean, still 80-90% of the businesses survived. They're still doing okay. So I don't, in fact, I don't track what RBI is doing. I don't read these financial newspapers. I don't track what's happening globally. And I'm at peace with my companies. So I like picking stocks which are not affected by that, which is why, I avoid commodity stocks because single anti-dumping duty could change the fortunes of these companies, which is another reason why I avoid these kinds of companies.
One last question. Do you think valuation of a company matters? Because if we see there is some very good company selling many essential products, so does it mean that we can buy the stock of the company at any price without thinking of the price, especially in the long term?
See, I think valuation definitely matters, but what matters most is whether you have picked the right company that will do well in the future, and whether your due diligence is right. Because ultimately, see, if you know the company is, if the company continues to grow for the next 10 years after you buy it, if you bought the stock at an expensive price, the next 10 years your returns will be lower, but your capital won't go. You know, the capital will not be eroded. So buying the stock at the right price helps you maximize your gains. You know, uh, I would say I bought CDSL when it was at 220. Today, I don't know, it's at 1200 or 1300 rupees. It's still a good company. You know, it's unlikely that in 5 years you would lose money if you invest in CDSL. Not a recommendation, just an example. But of course, your returns will not be 5x in the next 5 years. Most likely, CDSL will not be at 6,000 rupees. So what valuation helps is in maximizing your gains, helping you buy the stock when it's cheap. But I think what's more important is buying the right stock and then maybe focusing on buying it cheap. You know, if you buy trash at 1 rupee, it could go to 1 paisa. So, you know, if you're buying a bad quality company, no matter how cheap you buy, it will go cheaper and will go bankrupt. So, if as a beginner you find valuation tough, at least focus on the qualitative parameters and results will be lower, but it will take care of itself. You will not lose capital, you will still beat fixed deposits. And as you mature, you will learn valuation techniques. But yeah, it's important.
A lot of us has started investing by watching the videos of your channels since the last 1 to 2 years, and it has been really very useful and wonderful for all of us. Thank you a lot for making videos for everyone. I think we can wrap up now. So overall, on behalf of the entire team of the Finance Club IIT Patna, I would like to thank Mr. Pranjal Kamra for such a truly insightful session. I am certain that each and every person in the audience took something very valuable from your talk. I would also like to thank the audience for being so patient and enthusiastic during the entire session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting. It was a pleasure. Thank you.